Improvising, many people have different definitions of improvising. I thought about it, and for me, improvising is kind of like fast-paced, real-time problem solving. Problem solving for speaking, problem solving for conversation, or for presenting. Of course, ideally, when you're presenting things, depending on what it's for, you might want to have something prepared, but not necessarily memorized. But it will depend on what you're presenting and what the criteria is for that presentation. Anyways, I thought about what I would speak about today, and I wanted to speak about the beginning of my journey that helped me with presenting and with speaking. This is back all the way when I was 13 years old. So when I was 13, I was in secondary school in Singapore. One day, in an English presentation, I was doing a presentation. I had 2 other group members with me, and they were all hiding behind me this time. And I went up to the class. I started speaking just like any normal presentation. And back then, everyone that I knew would speak it this way. We would be very soft-spoken, closed off. But then one of my classmates at the time, towards the back of the room, she sort of did like this gesture where she just pointed up at me when I was speaking. And when I saw that, I was like, okay, she wants me to speak up a little bit. And so I then projected my voice a bit more in my presentation, and I was like, nah. So the volume level just kind of went up like this. And immediately, I remember my secondary school English teacher, I think her name was Miss Ivy, she sort of clapped and she pointed at me and she said to the class, "This is the volume and this is what you need to do when you're presenting." That was when it all came together. Like I suddenly had this really great feeling, like, wow, I did something really well. And that led me to look forward to presentations. Before, I would dread them like everyone else. I would be like, oh man, I gotta present something. It's so nervous, everyone else is getting up there. But after that incident, whenever I went up, I was so much more confident because I had that experience. And after that incident, every single presentation, I started to become known as the person who would do presentations well, because I kept that up. I took that feedback on and I just kept at it. Until one day, the school decided to pick me and a classmate of mine to go on an exchange program. That's just a week-long exchange program with a private school, like a private boys' school or something. And it was a science exchange program. And the reason I was chosen, the teacher told me, was because at the end of that exchange program, they wanted us to present what we learned in front of all these new people on stage. Like before, we would be presenting in front of a class in the classroom, but this was like a stage presentation. And they're like, "You're one of the best presenters we have, along with your classmates, so we're going to send you two." So I was really excited. I was really happy. I went to the exchange program, but it was such an interesting experience for me because I had the impression like, oh, this is going to be like, we're from a public school. Private school is going to be so different. They're going to be like elite people. And so I went there with that expectation. And the facility, for sure, was like very impressive. It was so much more fancy than the public school. At least that was the impression that I had like at the time. But when it came time to do the presentations at the end, and we did this alongside other schools who went with us. And when we did the presentation, we were group number 3, I believe. So they had two groups of people who went up before us. And when I saw them present, I started to think maybe the way that I was presenting was different. They presented it in a way that you would imagine in a movie, like a scientist or an office person going up to the stage, kind of monotone. They would have slides and they would go, oh, these are the findings. These are all very factual and very logical. So I saw that and I thought about what we were going to present because we didn't really rehearse it, me and my friend. We sort of had our material and we were like, all right, we're just going to wing it. But so initially I thought, okay, this is a science presentation. We're going to do it in a professional way, right? Like a science presentation, like a normal presentation. So me and my friend went up to the stage and I started it with, all right, guys, welcome. And I specifically used the term, all right, let's kickstart this presentation with this way. They enjoyed it so much that the next group that came up right after us, the guy tried to copy what I did. He got up there, and props to him, he probably didn't plan this, but he wanted to try something new, so that's a really good thing. But he was like, all right, guys, we're going to punch start this thing. And I remember just giggling at that because I was like, punch start, that's not really, I can tell what you're doing. and I'm flattered. But yeah, those were really definitive experiences for me because it helped me just, I think it brought out this joy in me for number one, presenting, and number two, just being able to communicate well to people, to be able to entertain while educating. And yeah, and that brought me joy. I didn't have a lot going for me when I was younger, but what I did have going for me was guitar, right? I learned how to play guitar and I felt like I was pretty good and people enjoyed listening to me, and my speaking communication skills. So that's one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about sharing this with people. And I'm hoping that if I can help you with your speaking, your presentation skills, or your communication skills, it will give you a different way to get through this world. If you think back on, like, why do you want to improve your speaking in the first place, or why should I improve my communication skills? You know, we've got AI now. AI can just speak for me. Well, in some cases, yes. But when it comes to your personal relationships, when it comes to, let's say you're starting a business or you're working for your employer, you want to get into a position maybe higher than what you're currently at now, right? You got to be able to communicate your ideas well so that people listen, so that people want to listen. And when people listen, they enjoy listening to you. They are entertained, or they don't get this feeling like, oh, when is this guy going to stop talking? And instead they'll be like, wow, this person's really great at communicating their ideas. Or they're so charismatic, like the way that they present themselves. I think of Steve Jobs, right? If you listen to some of his old interviews, they put him as an example of one of the greats when it comes to charisma and speaking. And one of the reasons why is because he spoke so differently than many other presenters that we're familiar with. Presenters that we're familiar with, there's many really great ones these days, but the ones that we can maybe relate to at work, and this is the way that I was before I started working on this presentation stuff, were people that used a lot of filler words. And filler words have their purpose, but when you use too much of it, especially when it comes to a presentation or when you're speaking to a group of people, it can get a little bit on your nerves. But what helped me, because I looked at that too. When I was in secondary school, after that incident, I wanted to get better and better. So I looked up YouTube videos, like what do great presenters do? And I saw one video and this really stuck with me. The guy said, people are afraid of the silence. But what the silence does is it actually lets people catch up. It allows their brain to catch up in between the things that you said. So it allows them to process what you just said and then what you say right after. And if you think about like a paragraph or a sentence, there are full stops and exclamation points and commas to break up the words and the sentences. If you imagine just reading a paragraph with all the filler words on the inside with no commas, no full stops, and it's just a continuous stream of words, it's probably going to be a lot to take in. And also a little bit overwhelming, right? So when it comes to speaking, the pauses act like those commas, or it acts like the full stops, or the spaces, the gaps between the sentences that make it more manageable for your brain to absorb. So when I understood that, I wasn't afraid of the silence anymore. In fact, I was purposely, at the time when I was practicing, I was purposely making sure that I had some small pauses in between, because to me, it was like, okay, I want to make sure that people understand what I'm saying and what I'm going to say. And this is one of the ways. If I just continuously talk, then people are not going to be able to get it. The other thing I'm working on is pacing. I'm still working on it. In fact, as I'm doing this, I realized that some of the things that I said before in my video could have been a little bit slower. And slower is good when it comes to communication with your partner, when it comes to communication with other people. Number one, because if you're too quick, sometimes it's easier to miss things. Number two is if you speak so fast, It can also sometimes be anxiety inducing. Like people mirror what you do sometimes. And sometimes that also applies to their state of mind. If you see someone who is really happy and really smiling, sometimes you feel happy on the inside. Likewise, if you see someone anxious or they just in such a huge rush, suddenly you feel like you're in a huge rush or you feel anxious. And that's one of the reasons why I try to find like videos like Hey Tableau, because the way that he does his videos is, I really enjoy it. There's so many nice, deliberate pauses. He doesn't speak too quickly, and you can really enjoy when he's talking. Everyone has their own why, and I'm sure you have yours. Maybe you haven't fully verbalized it or internalized it. I would recommend that you do, because once you do, it will give you a clearer vision, motivation for what you're doing. And it will give you a reason to keep at it consistently. And yeah, and hopefully it will also show you, if you record your progress from when you start, even if it's halfway to where you are now, you'll be able to see how far you've come. That's one of the things that I wish I did, is I didn't record any of that stuff. Back then, maybe we didn't have the technology, but I could have written journals, which I didn't, and I wish I did. But nowadays, we have so many different ways to capture our memories and our moments. So whether it's doing a video once a day, just for your own record, just like a video journal, or writing it down, like could be a written journal, typing it, that's cool too. I recommend in some way just to capture, little moments of your day or your progress, depending on what you're working on, so that you can see how far you've come. Anyways, so I hope that this helped. And if there's anything you'd like to see in the next video, please let us know. Haru is the one that's doing all this amazing work with this channel. So if there's anything you'd like to see from either of us, please let us know, and we'll do what we can. Don't be afraid to try new things. If you keep at it, if you're consistent and you have deliberate practice over time, you'll be able to improve and learn and do anything you want to do. Okay. And you have to believe in yourself as well. That's really important. All right. Take care of yourselves, take care of your loved ones, and I will see you in the next video. Take care.